Okay.
Okay, guys, in that case, I will send us live. We're live.
Right, good evening, all the friends and relations we have in the Vesey ward. Welcome to our latest virtual meeting of the Sutton Vesey Ward Forum. Congratulations to those of you who've succeeded in logging in online. To anyone still trying, I hope you'll get in there before the meeting finishes. Basically, as members of the public will know, we can't hold our usual public meetings in the Carpenter's Arms, which Kath and I have organised for 2 years. We can't do those any longer, but these meetings are therefore a kind of substitute, as far as we can make it, for the public meetings that we used to have. So we've got an opportunity to catch up with various things going on around the ward, which is what we'll do during the agenda. And just for those of you who may not have the agenda to hand, there's basically 4 items to be presented. The first is a presentation about the current public health situation, including COVID-19 latest. And for that, we don't have Justin Varney, because Justin is on a very well-earned week of annual leave. So Dino Mossi is stepping in to provide a summary on public health, and I'll be chairing that. We then move on to roads and highways, and Carl Randall is I'm looking at his title, a local engineering manager for Sutton and North Birmingham. And Carl will fill us in on the latest ups and downs with roads and highways. Then I'll hand over to Kath, who will look after a presentation on the Sutton Park and grounds maintenance issues, and also item 4 on the 4 items we want to cover is the latest update from our policing team in Sutton Vesey, and Kath will introduce our new police sergeant for our ward. So that's where we're going to go. Kath, do you want to just remind our viewers of how to use the chat facility to get messages to us?
I will. If Leslie, you can flick over to me. Thank you. So for anyone who's logged on at the moment, if you wave your mouse over the screen, we'll see several icons come up, and one is a Q&A icon. If you click on that and write any of your questions in the little announcement box, that will be published by our moderator John Mole, and or Rob and I will both take your questions and ask them on your behalf to get the answers you require from the relevant presenter. I hope that's clear. Back over to you, Rob.
Thanks, Kath. And what we will do as part of the fun and games of this meeting, I'm going to run a little straw poll on the chat side. So those of you who use the chat, there will be a little survey that I'd like you to answer. And I'll tell you a bit more about that as we go through the meeting. But the first item, as I said, of the substance of our meeting tonight is an update on the coronavirus situation across the city, and as far as we have the latest information in our own area. Justin Varney, as everybody knows, the Director of Public Health, has been up and down the media for months on end and is taking a very well-earned break this week. Dino is stepping into Justin's shoes, a great responsibility to follow. I'm sure we'll enjoy your presentation. Do you want to introduce yourself and your job role, and then give us an update on how the situation lies?
Thank you, absolutely. Yes, I'm Dr. Motti, I'm Dino Motti, I'm a public health registrar. I work in the public health team at Birmingham City Council. And today, indeed, I'm stepping into Justin Varney's shoes, which is a responsibility. Our work is that of sort of working towards making sure that COVID is managed for the whole of the citizenship of Birmingham. And today, speaking with Sutton Vesey population, we will look also a little bit at the local picture, although we tend to look at the whole of Birmingham as a whole, in order to make sure that, given that people move, is not just focused on any small area. So I'll try to give you a little bit of an insight on Sutton Vesey, but I may not be able to give a breakdown that goes too much in detail. Birmingham, like the rest of the country, is facing a second wave, as we know, and therefore we were some of the earlier cities to enter some, let's say, different measures in the rest of the country, but we are not as up on the scale as other areas. At the moment, we are around 100 cases. I'm going to use numbers that simplify the view of what the situation is, rather than give specific complex views of numbers. So it's 100 cases. We passed 100 cases. So we're around 130, 120 cases per 100,000 people. And if we multiply this by 11 to give the whole population of 1,000,001 for Birmingham, we're talking about 1,400 cases across the whole of the city, which would give us around 200 cases a day. That's just to give a picture of what the COVID situation is in Birmingham, and these numbers are growing, but they're also growing in terms of testing. So Birmingham is getting its fair share of testing nationally. So we're getting our own share of testing. We're doing a larger and larger number of tests in Birmingham. We're now getting to 4,000 tests a day, and they have been really rapidly increasing in the last few days. And that is actually good, because we had some issues with reaching some of the population. As you know, testing is done in many cases through drive-through, and parts of Birmingham did not have access to a car. So we also stepped in as council, and we put on a very effective initiative, which is trying to reach those communities that have higher rates and have lower rates of car ownership, to make sure with the drop and collect service that we reach everyone, and we make sure that we reach those early, so that if they test positive, they can isolate. In general, let's say the structure of the spread is household to household, and that is something that has to be borne in mind, because it's a specific method of transmission. So that's why the new measures that were put in place in Birmingham are focusing on making sure that households do not mix, because that's where it's been identified by public health data that the spread of the virus is happening. So it has a sense, this measure, and we are hoping that it will produce some effects. It obviously takes a few weeks for all of these measures to appear in the data, in the sense that viruses have an incubation period, and that incubation period obviously will mean that across several generational spread we'll see these measures happening. So everybody is doing their part, and I think we will hopefully soon some effects of this. In terms of the age groups at the moment, compared to previously, it seems that the 20 to 39 age group is more affected. So it's young adults of working age, but we are also starting to see that these groups obviously will go home and will meet other households, and that's why we're trying to, obviously they shouldn't at the moment we introduce these measures, but that spread is obviously reaching more vulnerable groups, and we have to really keep vigilant, because we're starting to see more hospital admissions and unfortunately also more deaths, and that is what we are trying to avoid with these measures. In terms of what's happening in the rest of the country, Birmingham is a bit different, and so I wouldn't make comparisons with the Northeast and recent news. So Birmingham is on a slightly different trajectory at the moment. In terms of what can people do, that is, we're putting in place a very important initiative, which is, I would like everybody who participating today to take note that we can register to become a COVID champion. We already registered 160 last week, but we would like to reach 1,500. So I can share a link. I don't know how we do it in the chat or elsewhere, but we could all do our part by registering as a COVID champion, and because that is a very important initiative to make sure that information and support is spread across the population. Another message that I think would be very important for everybody to take note of is that the order with which, given that there has been a little bit of confusion with communication, the order in which we should act is symptoms, not positive test or negative test. That is very important. So if we have symptoms, we should isolate immediately and then test. So the test positivity or negativity is independent of this decision whether to isolate. So we don't continue living our lives with symptoms and go around in the community. The moment we get symptoms, we isolate and then we test. That is a very important message, because there have been some reports that not everybody had understood that the testing comes after the beginning of the isolation. So that is very important, because obviously in the meantime we could be spreading the virus in our communities. And in terms of Sutton Vesey is let's say not as affected as other parts. So just to give you a picture of what numbers we're looking at. So in the last week, there have been 17 cases in Sutton, which is around 2 cases per day on average, which is not as high as elsewhere. But again, we're talking about household to household transmission. So we're not talking about regional and ward specific issues. We are talking about household to household. So we have to make sure that we don't mix households, and that is the indication that comes, and it's specific as a measure in Birmingham. I'm open for questions as well. So if anybody, I don't know whether now or later wants, I am happy to field some.
Okay.
Well, first of all,
I'll bring you in, Kath, when I bring you in when the questions come through.
Okay. So first of all, Dino, would you email the link?
We need to put live onto Kath.
Of course. Should I put it in the chat?
Don't worry. So Dino, if you could put the link to the COVID champions to John Mole or myself or Rob, and we can pop that in the chat so the residents have it. And then any updates we send residents, we can email that out to them
Absolutely.
as well.
That would be a pleasure.
Secondly, around the COVID, I've had a question, which is actually for me to answer, unfortunately, around school issues. It says, are council able to supply additional support to schools to help them stay open if affected by an outbreak of COVID, such as supply teachers for online lessons, which could be teacher-led, or in classrooms if staffing levels are low? Could you also support schools by offering a deep cleaning service? So the latter point first, there is a deep cleaning service already being done in schools every week. So some schools may have reduced some hours, like I know one of my local schools has, on a Friday to incorporate the deep cleaning process due to COVID. So that's in place already. And as regards to putting on additional staff, if there are any additional costs relating to COVID that schools need to do, they have to directly claim them back from the Department for Education, and they have to meet certain criteria. So I cannot outright say that there is funding out there for every initiative that needs to be put in place to cover for our children, but it doesn't necessarily come directly from Birmingham City Council. Some things have already been covered by the Birmingham COVID Fund for schools during the initial outbreak, etc., for additional risk assessments and to help with the cleaning and all of that. But in terms of additional help and support that is required, that would have to go directly to be put in directly by the school and then claimed back via the Department for Education. Over to you, Rob.
Okay. Thanks, Kath. I'll go back to any other questions to Dino, and I've got a couple. First of all, Sutton Vesey is a ward where a lot of families have youngsters who are students, both in the city and up and down the country. So could you just clarify the position about the status of students? Is this university specific? There's all this talk about Christmas and coming back home. So do we know where we stand on that? That's the first question. Second question has come in from a resident in Boldmere. Obviously the incidence of COVID across the city varies from area to area. Is there a possibility that we may end up with some parts of the city with tighter restrictions than others? And where would the boundaries be drawn, etc.? Or are we all in it, all 1.1 million people covered by exactly the same rules, and is that likely to continue? So back to Dino.
Yeah. Thank you for the questions. They're both very, very important questions in the sense that they affect in many ways national policy. So the first one in particular with the university students and the situation in especially student accommodation is something that we're obviously looking at very closely as public health. So we had meetings recently with University of Birmingham, and we are together with Public Health England looking at all situations with potential outbreaks and isolation and indeed the movement of students and definition of household and return to families or else is something that we're following very closely. There is an issue with national policy and some laws that Birmingham City Council doesn't have any, let's say, independent decision about. So it's something that the government and nationally will have to be determined. I've recently heard, as you have in the news, that the government is saying that students will be able to return at Christmas. That said, it's something that we're all sort of expecting to see how it develops. I mean, it's not something that public health at Birmingham City Council can yet predict, but we all hope that obviously we'll find ourselves in Christmas with absolutely no worry when students have to return home. It's certainly a complicated situation, and again, we are working closely with Public Health England and academic institutions to make sure that the welfare of students is preserved and defended, and we are just doing our best to make sure that the situation is managed. In terms of your second question about localized measures, again, it's not something that's been done, and it's not something that we are expecting. I cannot really predict yet a situation where a specific part of the city might be under different measures at the moment, and I would have to look at the data and discuss obviously with the Director of Public Health England, if any of these situations were to emerge. At the moment, it's not the case, and we're looking again at household to household transmission. There is no specific zone or specific reason at the moment for certain parts of the city to be in different measures.
Okay,
I hope I answered your questions.
Sounds good. If the camera could come back to me, please. Thank you, and much appreciated. I've two other questions, and I think we're there. Just following up the issue of further restrictions, and we have a message from Kate from the ward, who is asking when the Birmingham restrictions, the enhanced restrictions, are likely to be reviewed. I know there is a cycle, sometimes it's every 3 weeks we'll review the situation. So the Birmingham specific additional restrictions, is there a time when these may be reviewed, you know, either the prospect of continuing them, tightening them, or relaxing them? That's the first question. Last one, I think, from me. COVID Champions sounds a great title. Is this the same as COVID Marshals? We've heard about COVID Marshals. The government have said there will be COVID Marshals to make sure the rules are adhered to. Is a COVID champion going to be a COVID Marshal? And secondly, could you tell us a bit more about what COVID champion in Birmingham might do? We've got a lot of residents who like to get involved and do things in our ward, so hopefully you'll get some you'll have attracted some interest here. But can you tell us a bit more about what's involved? And then I think we've agreed that a link to anyone who's interested we could put in the chat, or we could put out to members through an email. Over to Dino.
Hello. Yes. In terms of
yes.
Okay, I'm now allowing. In terms of COVID champion, it's not a marshal in any way. It's not a role of enforcement in any way. It's a person that everybody knows and trusts, somebody that can help in whatever way they can. It's a volunteering role. It's somebody that in the community steps forward to have a role in making a difference. I would really direct everybody to the link to read the proper details, so that everybody can form their opinion as to whether they have the time or the inclination to cover a role like this. But obviously, it's a role which is very beneficial to the community, and everybody who can should join and lend their time for their communities. In terms of your first question around, which was actually coming from the public, around the frame of review, it's a few weeks, so it's really determined by these measures are, even if we would like to review them more frequently, as I said earlier, are sort of measured by the biological cycle of a virus and the epidemiological spread. So a virus takes a while to be incubated, and we see over a few generations of transmission, which is a few weeks, 2-3 weeks, whether the measure is having the effect that we were expecting. So we compare what the trend was before and what we were expecting the trend to be to what it is at the moment after a few weeks. So I would expect all these measures are continuously under review, but there are certain points at 2-3 weeks where we look at the data again and we see that. Yes.
If you can take the camera back to me. Thank you. That's another very helpful piece of information, Dino. Much appreciated. You've done a great job tonight in explaining something I didn't understand. I sit on the committee, the Scrutiny Committee for Health and Social Care, but I hadn't appreciated the message about symptoms, isolate and then test. I had assumed, like probably most people, you got some symptoms, you run off and try and get a test, and then if it's positive, you then isolate. But if I'm right, and I'm repeating, I hope correctly what you've said, if you have symptoms, the first thing you do is to isolate until you can get your test, and then you decide what you're going to do depending on the test result. I hope I've got it right. But I'm going to just call in Dino for final comment. I don't think we've got anything else on the list. So if you want to make a farewell comment to us, Dino, I'll pass the camera back to you and you can round off.
You stated it perfectly, is exactly that, and it's very important to reiterate it because it is indeed not something that we all, let's say, lived with previously. It's a complicated and confusing situation sometimes, so it's very important that when you develop symptoms, you isolate first and then you test. The test is not determining that first choice of isolation, is the symptoms. So you will isolate, and then we will with a test verify whether you have the virus or not. But in the meantime, you're making sure that you immediately stop the potential spread that you might be causing. So yes, thank you for repeating that. It's very important, and you stated it perfectly. Thank you, everyone. This was, in my opinion, a real privilege and honor to speak with the public, and I'm really grateful, obviously, for the modern means by which we can do it without breaking the link of communication with the community.
Thanks very much.
I wish everybody a good evening.
Thank you for coming, Dino.
Yeah,
it's been a pleasure.
Yes, I'd like to thank you on behalf of myself and Kath, and I know the large audience that's watching us would give you a round of applause if only they were able to do that. You can nod or shake your head on this, but I understand that was your first live performance on a ward forum meeting, if I'm right. So nodding in response. So congratulations on your debut. No doubt we're going to see more of you, and do give Justin our very best wishes when he comes back from holiday. So thank you again. Hopefully we're all better informed than we were a few minutes ago.
Thank you.
Just as a reminder to everybody, this meeting is actually recorded, and if you've got friends or neighbours who might want to hear this, it should be online. Council officers will confirm this at some point, but we can actually restore this or recover this recording and broadcast it over the next few days for anyone who missed tonight's entertainment. On which subject, we'll move on now, but just before introducing Carl, I said there would be some entertainment. So this is my little slot, quiz night for Sutton Vesey Ward. And members of the public will know me very well, but I never let a meeting go by without talking about rubbish, bins, collection, waste. So my short item on bins tonight, or rubbish. As members of the public will know, the tip site in Sutton and across the city, there are 5 sites are open, but you have to book. Currently, you have to book. Question is how long the booking may carry on. Would people prefer to keep the booking system or to go back when time allows to a kind of open drop in when you like scheme? So here's a challenge to all of those who can use the chat function. This is really going to test out if you're watching this and can use the chat. Will you please express a view in chat if you would like to keep the booking system, type keep, and if you would like to scrap the booking system and go back to the kind of drop in when you like, type scrap. So you can either write keep or write scrap. I've done this survey twice over the weekend, one in an email to people who've been on to me about bins and rubbish, and I've also put an online Twitter poll out over the weekend. So I'll give members of the public a chance to express a view. Nobody has done so yet. But we've got, during Carl Randall's presentation, which we're moving on to next, put your comments in. Keep if you want to keep booking, scrap if you want to scrap the booking and go back to the original system. And when Carl is finished, I'll tell you what the results are. And I'll also tell you what the results were from my online poll. Now that's my excitement for tonight. So we're going to move over to Carl Randall, who's going to provide the next entertainment. Carl, as everybody knows, our local engineering manager, is responsible for highways work. He's not responsible for major road repairs because that's on a contract run by Kia Highways now. But Carl is our local highways man and is going to keep, update us on a number of schemes which are going on in our Sutton Vesey ward. So camera goes over to Carl.
Thank you very much, Councillor, and good evening, ladies, gentlemen, everybody watching. Yes, I'm Carl Randall, local engineering manager for highways, look after Sutton Vesey, Sutton Coalfield, Erdington, up to the West Brom ground, north of Birmingham. I have a small team of very good engineers that assist me, and between us we try and keep the highways safe, introduce new measures and schemes, crossings, yellow lines, humps, cushions, refuges, everything that the motorist sees and does and hopefully obeys to ensure things run smoothly. Specifically in the Vesey ward, I'm going to update you now on some of the things we've been working on. Vesey is always a very busy ward for lots of reasons, including your councillors who are very active. And we are quite good at getting money into the ward as well. So we do tend to do quite a bit of work in Vesey, perhaps even compared to some other wards. So first of all, Boldmere School. We've been consulting and liaising with people on a scheme, Coalfield Road, for quite some time now. The scheme was sort of split into 2 elements, if you like. One element was 20 mile an hour, which had been requested, obviously going past Boldmere Junior Infant School and the nursery. We want people to keep the speed down. It's a 30 mile an hour road, so it was asked to do a 20. So we've proposed to do 20 mile an hour. We can't afford humps or cushions, so it'll be with signage and roundels on the road, which will say 20. Another element to the scheme is to try and introduce some parking restrictions, try to boost some existing restrictions, try to keep parents and guardians from parking right outside the classroom where we can. This is where we've hit a little snag. We have a firm group of objectors that don't want the restrictions in place, and they have their reasons why. And we have an equally firm group of objectors that don't think we're doing enough, and they want the restrictions to go further than we've proposed. We've tried to shuffle the restrictions about a bit longer, a bit shorter. We've had to come to a position where we think we hope we've got it about right. we're going to do the 20 mile an hour. We're going to do some restrictions on Warden Road, on Cofield Road, put no loading, unloading on the bend opposite the school, do a keep clear on Boldmere Road at Cofield Road, enhance the no entry signs because not everybody sees that Cofield Road's no entry, a one way. So we're going to boost the signs out, some high visibility backing boards. And we are currently taking an objection report for consideration to a cabinet member to say, look, this is what we've proposed. These are the various meetings we've had, the consultations have taken place. This is the feedback and objections from the residents, 6 residents and a small petition. However, this is also the objections from the other side of the coin. And then what we've committed to is that we're saying, let us put this in as advertised. We've spent a lot of money getting to this position. We don't want to lose the funding we have. We clearly aren't going to get 100% one way or the other. So what we're committing to is, let's put this in place and then we'll commit to monitor it with whoever's objecting or whoever supports and the councillors, and let's see if it works. And if it doesn't work, if we need a few more meters of restriction on one side or the other or the both, then we can build up a case to say so. But I think we're in danger of talking about it for many months, and until we actually do something, both sides could be right. So the report will go to a cabinet member, hopefully next week. We'll have a decision on his thoughts based on the report, and then we'll either know that we can proceed, notwithstanding the objections received, and then we can try and get the scheme in place this financial year, hopefully before Christmas, but if not, by the end of March 21. And then we will commit to monitor it. Let's get everybody back to school, more traffic back on the road, and then we can see what the actual position is and if we just need to tweak it, as we do with all schemes at all times. So that's an update on the Boldmere scheme. We're also working on a New Oscott Safe Routes to School scheme. Now, Safe Routes to School is a central capital budget where all the schools in Birmingham, 500 plus, if you like, bid into to try and get some funding. All we ask that is you have an up-to-date school travel plan, and that you're engaged with MoShift Stars, a government initiative to try and increase safety at schools. And then you're eligible to bid, and hopefully we'll get some money for that school. We have been successful at New Oscott School, and we have as much as £20,000. And we're looking at this in a couple of phases. The strongest request around the school is actually for a zebra crossing on Monmouth Drive. Now, the problem we have with that is, the cost of a zebra crossing, frightening, but also we can't put a zebra crossing, we're minded not to by Department for Transport, if the 85th percentile, the average speed is 36 mile an hour or above. Well, it's a 40 mile an hour road, so it's really a non-starter. And a signal control crossing, you're talking anything up to £80,000, and we clearly haven't got that. So what we're looking to do, a two-stage approach. We're looking and we're consulting on reducing the speed limit for a section of Monmouth Drive in the vicinity of where people get the bus and cross and use that road. We're consulting now. The deadline for objections is 16th of October, so it's only just gone live. And then what we're hoping is, if people support it, no objections, etc., we'll bring the speed limit down to 30 mile an hour. And then, as part of a future scheme or future assistance with funding from somebody, we can then do speed surveys and say, look, we've brought the speed down to 30, people are doing 35, 34, and we'll be able to justify doing a zebra crossing, provided we can get the money, and that could be £25,000. We're also working with the school, and my colleagues have met with the head teacher on more local things that may be needed there, maybe some railings, maybe some bollards, maybe drop curb, maybe boost the traffic regulation order for the existing waiting restrictions, yellow lines. We think we've really got it covered there. It's about people abusing the yellow lines, thinking, well, I'm only going to be here for a few minutes, I only want to do this. Unfortunately, a lot of people have that attitude, and one car replaces another car and pulls up behind another car, and then you wonder why you've got yellow lines in the first place. So hopefully on New Oscott we'll be able to get the speed down and put some minor measures in this year with a view to doing something with the crossing in a future scheme. Moving on, Church Road. I've had meetings with the residents of Church Road and Councillor Pocock and Scott on a couple of occasions, along with the church, the Spires retirement home and Churchill, I think it is, and the sports club. Everybody's got a different interest in that road. Residents want to be able to park, and their visitors. The football club want people to be able to park and visitors to park. Obviously the church has a slightly different need, a bit more on a Sunday and peak times with a funeral or congregation. So everyone's got a slightly different sort of need there. So what we've done is consult on a sensitive scheme where we're just looking to do restrictions where we really think they're needed on the junctions of a couple of roads, a little bit by the Spires entrance and exit, because people struggle with visibility while pulling out. We've had to be careful not to upset everybody because, as I say, the church were concerned about losing parking, the sports club concerned, residents are concerned that their visitors need to park there. So we managed to get agreement. I think we ended up perhaps just one or two objections, which was really good from a very large consultation and two very well attended public meetings. A lot of people had a lot of things to say. We've now put all of the lines in place. All we're waiting on now, and there's a little bit of a queue, a little bit of a delay. The final part of the process is the scheme is audited by people separate to my team, independent if you like, to make sure that all the lines, signs, everything we've done complies with what we advertised and what we can do. And then it's sealed legally with legal services, and then it becomes legally enforceable and people can receive a penalty charge notice of £70 if they breach the restrictions. So we're not quite there yet. It looks as though we are on the road, but we're not quite. We're just waiting for the final audit and sealing of the legal order. I've been asked to mention the clean air zone. That has been delayed, and there's a new date. It just says 2021. Obviously, COVID has really hit this hard in a number of ways. Traffic has significantly reduced compared to previous. People haven't been able to work in offices and work how they were before. So at the moment, it's just a delay. It's still looking to go ahead. It's just going to be delayed until next year. A couple of other things, ward minor transport measures programme for this year. I have a meeting with Councillor Pocock, Councillor Scott a little bit later this week, just to go through and finalise some of the things we're looking at in addition to what I've mentioned. Some of those things we're looking to do some drop curbs that have been requested as part of Councillor Scott's accessible Vesey ward plan. This is where we drop the curbs at the end of a footpath to just a few millimetres height, about 6 millimetres, and that aids pedestrians crossing, and especially wheelchairs, pushchairs, mobility scooters, those that struggle to get up a full 5-inch curb face or higher. So it just makes the ward more accessible, and we have noted that in the northern part of the ward, Bannersgate, New Oscott, there is a need for some there. Again, quite expensive to do them, so there'll be a limit how many we can do, but we'll do our best and we'll do as many as we can. We'll also have a look and have a chat at what other yellow lines are needed, a couple of small schemes. We're also working with the councils and the police on a community speed watch, and there's some roads identified that the police are willing to support with community speed watch, and I'll just need to get that confirmed from the local sergeant. Sometimes it's from Chief Constable Lloyd House, hopefully just from the police sergeant, to say that they're committing to that, and then we can put some signs up warning of speed enforcement. So hopefully that'll have an impact and improve things in those roads with regard to speed. I think that's a very quick roundup, but willing to take any questions from anybody.
Yeah, there are some coming in. If the camera could come back to me. Yep, thank you very much, Carl. That's sparked off quite a lively set of questions. I don't know if you've
I
seen
have to go now, sorry.
Unfortunately, your book's booked. Let's just pick up two. I think this is to do with traffic wardens, actually. A question emailed in from Eco Sutton earlier. Who enforces the rules against idling? By which I don't mean lazing around on the beach, but is it there with your car and the engine ticking over, which is the highway code says you can't do it, but I think it's traffic wardens. The second, I'll bring you back in a sec, Carl. The second one that a resident called Kate has mentioned the yellow line, which is on Antrobus Road, and the traffic wardens, who apparently don't start work until, she says here, I asked a warden a long time ago and he said we don't bother starting work till late in the morning. I don't know whether this is true or not. You could confirm or deny that allegation, but do we know why the traffic wardens are not looking at that particular yellow line where the kids do cross to get to school? So two questions about traffic wardens. Over to Carl.
Okay, the first one,
you need to wait till that's it.
Okay, thank you. Well, the first one, traffic wardens, they're civil enforcement officers. Parking was decriminalised 2001 from the police to the city council, so it's a civil offence, and they're civil enforcement officers, and they don't enforce where people are idling. I have previously had issues with this. And just off the top of my head, I think it's part of regulatory, or I just can't think who, but I have had liaison with them before, and it was around Duke Street. And the reason being, they've moved the theory driving test to, is it 2 Duke Street now, from Four Oaks House. And so a lot of people are pulling up. Son daughter goes in for the theory test and they're sitting there with the engine idling, and it was reported to us, and I made some inquiries, and there is an arm of the council that does look at it, but it's, as you can imagine, extremely difficult to enforce, because an engine idling obviously means the driver sat there, and the first thing a driver will do when approached by authority with the power to fine is apologise and switch the engine off. So it's a huge sort of resource that sort of doesn't get anything back for it. I think there's a very small team involved. It's hard enough for the civil enforcement officers, because if a motorist is in the vehicle, they will drive off, you know, if they've got any sense, as soon as the warden approaches, and likewise with engines idling. Not the civil enforcement officers, an arm of the city council, very few staff involved in that. And I did look at, was there any signage we could put, but the only signage we can put up is approved in the traffic signs manual and approved by the Department for Transport, and initially we can't find any signage. I mean, you can imagine the request we'd get for it, just about everywhere, but more specifically in a place like this, or, you know, by an ATM, by a speed bank, by a school. There's some places where, you know, people will idle, especially in the winter. If it's cold, they'll keep the engine running. But at the moment, we can't find an appropriate type of sign. They're likely to be a couple of £100 each, and £200-300 for a post if we could. So a difficult one to resolve, I'm afraid.
Not when they wake up in the morning.
And yes, as far as that's concerned, I don't know who said that and was I being a bit mischievous or what. But if you think we have the wardens support us at all the schools in Birmingham as and when we can. And I've had meetings with them from 8:15, many occasions at many schools. So I don't know what sort of time they said to start, but I wouldn't say it was later morning. You know, certainly the meetings I've had with them, and one of the key roles is around schools, and also likewise at the end of the school day. The staffing resource does reduce towards the end of the day. But there is an amount that work through the evenings and through the night. And the reason I know this, we have some schools that contact us, like Sutton Grammar School for Girls. They will tell us, oh, we have an open evening, 6 o'clock till 8 o'clock, and then I'll email enforcement and they'll make sure that they have a presence there so that they're not parking up, Goldersley Road and all the other local roads. So it's the evening is more sort of by appointment, by notification, and also I look after £30 display car parks across Birmingham, and a lot of those, if not most, are 24-hour parking. Certainly all the Sutton Coalfield ones are, and they do patrol those, and they'll patrol them at 10 at night. So no, it's not the same workforce as in the day as far as numbers. But there is always a presence, and if there's a particular issue at 8 o'clock at night in a road, then I can just drop them an email and ask them to pay particular attention at that time. So not so much routine as in the day, but certainly we can get enforcement at any time.
Okay, thanks. Camera comes back to me. Thank you. And I can bear out actually that traffic wardens do work late in the evening, because I did once view them ticketing cars in Sheffield Road about 9 o'clock at night. So they may start late and finish late. Moving on, there are a number of questions still outstanding. One is about the cycle lane on Brassington Avenue. A resident here says, I hear this has been closed. I hope it isn't permanent. It needs improvement, not scrapping, as there needs to be more provision for cycling. Thank you. And I know the town council, I think, called on the city to scrap it, and I think it has been scrapped, but maybe Carl, you can tell us, is it permanently scrapped or is there going to be a revised scheme? Over to Carl.
Okay, thank you. The first and honest answer is I didn't know that. That is news to me. I've been one of the consultees from a team that was looking at pop-up cycle lanes across the whole of Birmingham, with a view to some of them being more permanent, some of them building on what previous Sustrans and Bike North Birmingham and other schemes that had gone in place, including through Vesey, the Violet route, which got us the Toucan crossing on Boldmere Road by Church Road, and many other crossings. I did have my concerns. I won't shy away from that. There was things I didn't like about that cycle lane. There was things I asked for that I believe would make it better, and that they have done. I cannot object. I have to work with and support and offer, my best advice and guidance to other colleagues as well. It was controversial, obviously, taking out one of the lanes and making that a two-way cycle lane, which contraflows the main one-way direction for all vehicles. There was a potential conflict with the exit of Gracechurch car park. There was a fact that Park Road was being one way to Brassington Avenue and no left turn down. There were lots of issues were raised. But I must admit, as you're aware, I've been on holiday 3 weeks and it's my second day back, and I wasn't aware that it had been closed. I was aware when I went on holiday it hadn't officially opened, although some cyclists were using it. So I would have to actually dig a bit deeper into that and find out what's happened.
Okay, the camera comes back to me. Yes, thanks, Carl. We're aware that you've been on the beach for a few days and that tan is really glowing well. So you had a sunnier holiday than I did. So we'll come back on the question of Brassington. I think, from my recollection, it was open for about 3 days and then it has been closed. And I've seen some correspondence from the town council requesting that it be closed and confirming that it will be. That's something that we'll follow up. There's a few things in the chat. I'm not sure you'll be able to respond directly to them, Carl, because some of them will be for Kia Highways. So if I just run through quickly what we've got. One question that came in earlier, when can Sunnybank Road be resurfaced? We've had a resident say, when can Westwood Road, I think it's the north side, to be put on the list of repair jobs? And there's a specific issue, perhaps you can take this up, Carl, with Kia. Pavement repaired outside number 10 Radacre Road. A large portion of tarmac is lifted up by tree roots and there's a trip hazard, so perhaps you could chase that with Kia. We've also got a, if I'm right here, a comment about, perhaps you could pick this one up as well. The issue of idling, there's a request here, could the idling issue be taken up as part of Mode Shift Stars, which is a scheme for educating drivers outside schools?
That's a good question.
I think there is obviously an interesting question there as to whether that could be added to Mode Shift Stars. A resident called Ray has asked if we can lobby for a ban on this practice of idling outside schools to be enforced. That's a variation to the national provision, but maybe we can have a look at that, Carl, as to what there might be possible to do on that. I'm just going to try and run through everything here because we are running quite short of time. There's a resident called Tony who's typed in a Welsh accent, I think, on this chat. There is yellow lines being painted. How about some yellow lines around disabled parking places? I'm not quite sure how that would work, but maybe you can explain. There's not been any in the Vesey ward apart from Redacre Road. I think resident Ray can claim the credit for that. So some people do not seem to notice disabled written in white letters. So can we do anything to highlight that? I think I've got everything on the list.
And just to add, I've actually witnessed people ignoring those disabled bays on Redacre Road, quite significantly ignoring them as well. So I agree with that point made by residents.
Sorry, Kathy is saying, she's not on live camera, but she's bearing out that as a resident who goes to schools quite a lot, she's witnessed a lot of that behaviour. Carlson, over to you for a round-off comment.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. I'll take the number 10 Redacre Road, the bit Mackish. I'll raise that with Kia Highways to ask them to have a look at it. I'll see if I can find out Westwood Road, Sunnybank Road, one or two others, see if there's any programme of works yet. The only programme we're seeing at the moment is quite a limited one, and I know in the Sutton wards there's only been a handful of roads, although fortunately it was Somerville Road and Clifton Road after many years of campaigning. So I'll look in to see about those. I'll also chat with my behaviour change colleagues around the idling outside schools and whether Mode Shift Stars can play a part with that. With regard to the yellow lines around disabled bays, there's two types of disabled bays on the highway, you know, supermarkets and other places aside. On the highway, there's two types. The vast majority are the white advisory disabled bay markings in residential roads, and by its very name they are advisory. So if you are a blue badge holder and you have nowhere else to park, no off-road parking, no driveway, no garage, then you can apply to us if you've got a blue badge and a vehicle registered at the address, and we'll look to try and provide the bay as near to your property and as accessible as we can. However, they are advisory. The cost, under £100 to have put down, and ideally they're for the use of that blue badge holder, but legally there is no enforcement. It really is a please be considerate, to the people who need it. So even if the person's requested it, any disabled person could park in it, or indeed even anybody without a blue badge. Normally people abide by them. Normally, people understand that somebody has a particular need. And the reason that 90% or more of these are advisory is the ones in Redacre Road and the two outside the former council house on King Edward Square, and I'm struggling to even think of any others. To have a legally enforceable disabled bay brings in a traffic regulation order, consultation, adverts in the press, signage, poll, and they probably come out at about £6,000 each, as opposed to less than £100. And then you imagine if we did, there's probably a few short thousand in Sutton of these. There's probably tens of thousands across Birmingham. You imagine the kind of costs involved if you're doing that each time. And then you had the unfortunate situation that the person had passed away, and then a new house owner comes in and they want the marking removed. So you've got that process and cost to reverse it. And so it's just not economically viable to do those. The exception was Redacre Road, and there are a few exceptions, like, as I say, King Edward Square, and that's because it was seen as something, as an addition. We could provide a couple of disabled spaces, legally enforceable, near to the shops, because the only other alternative would have been to remove a couple of the parking spaces on Boldmere Road and replace them with disabled bays. But by doing it this way, it was creating an addition. We have 2 or 3 more spaces now that we didn't have before. These are legally enforceable. It is the civil enforcement officers that have the powers to issue a fixed penalty charge notice, but obviously they have to be there and see it. Now, Boldmere Road is patrolled. There's a 1-hour limited waiting on Boldmere Road itself, and there's many other restrictions on all the roads around there, single and double yellow lines. So there is a presence around there. And it's done by motorbike, and the best I can do is really write to parking enforcement and just ask them to keep paying particular attention, to that disabled bay if it's been abused.
Okay. Right. If camera comes back to me.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, thanks again, Carl. I think that's a great summary of where we're at. Ray in the chat column has mentioned the disabled bay in Redacre Road, so you've obviously picked that point up. 2 residents, J and F, have asked about support for the Monmouth Drive crossing. There is an online petition knocking around on this, so I'll make sure that's circulated out for anyone who wants to add their name to it. So I think that's probably it for Carl's lot, and I'm rounding off my session in a moment. But thanks again, Carl, for your time. 2 days back from holiday, that's not bad going. That's you to pick up so much work so quickly. We'll obviously have another meeting, hopefully before Christmas, and at that meeting we can go through the schemes that we hope to fund with this year's financial allocation from the minor works budget for highways. So thanks again, Carl, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the next meeting.
Thank you very much.
Kathy's going to take over from me, but just before we do that, I need to announce the results of the open the tips, close the tips ballot. Thank you to the 9 people who expressed a view here, of which 6 said keep a booking system and 3 scrap the booking system, which is interesting actually, 2 to 1. I said I'd also run a poll at the weekend on Twitter. 102 replies to that one, and amazingly, exactly the same proportions. 67% in favour of retaining the scheme, 33% of going back to the old scheme. When I did a survey on the email to my bin group, it was more or less the same, about 76% to keep the current scheme, 24% to return to the old system. But in the comments that came back, interesting variants. Maybe keep 1 day when you can drop in, or 2 days when you can book, so that there is room for it, or certain times of the day, booking only. So all of this, I'm going to feed back to the waste management department. I have nothing whatever to do with waste, but I have an interest in it, as everyone knows. So I know the council are going to at some point consider whether to relax the booking system or to retain it or adapt it. So all the views you've expressed, thank you very much. These will all be fed back into the council's sausage machine, and hopefully someone will take some notice of them. Right, so that's the end of my slot for tonight. The rest of the meeting is chaired by Kath. So can I ask the camera to go over to Kath to entertain you for part 2?
Entertaining, I don't think I'm going to be terribly entertaining, but I would like to say thank you to Carl for all the hard work himself and his team have done on the accessibility issues. I know it's been a lot of work, but it's much appreciated, not by just me, but the residents as well. It's a really good thing that we're doing. So onward to item 5, which is parks and grounds maintenance. So if we could bring up John Porter, the district's parks manager, who's going to cover highways and park issues, and also we'll be introducing Becky Clark, who is part of the Friends of the Gates in Boldmere, who's going to give us an update on what's going on with that group too. So over to you, John, first, I believe.
Good evening to both our watchers and listeners out there.
25 people watching this.
Okay. How many people
25
watching?
Apparently.
25. Gosh. I shall put you to sleep so you sleep soundly. What a summer. I could bore you with lots of stories about getting back on track with things like grass mowing and responding to the COVID situation. You have heard about the COVID situation, I take it? Yeah, I think we have. I've been reflecting on things, and I want to give you a bit of a personal narrative before passing over to Becky. And what I've reflected on is I was thinking about my earliest memories, actually, within living memory. You know, my local shop was a general store. We had a butcher's, a greengrocer's, and a news agent. We had seasonal vegetables. We only had turkey at Christmas, Brussels sprouts, and we're all involved with growing our own food and getting out more. We even used to go on holiday locally. And within my lifetime now, we get cuisines from all over the world. I can remember having my first curry, my first pizza and stuff like that. And, you know, kids are growing up thinking that's normal. Well, it's not, it's exceptional. And we're actually involved now in global markets for food, even for leisure and so many different activities. And I think, whilst we know the price of things, we've lost an understanding of the value of things. And we may actually be living in the most convenient age of humanity. We've been very blessed in our lifetimes to have these advantages, but the signs are it might not be sustainable. And the wake-up call for me from the COVID experience was hearing the Prime Minister saying, why don't you all go to parks? Which was a brilliant idea, apart from, you know, nobody ever spoke to parks about it. And then suddenly our footfall, the number of visitors went through the roof. And actually what we learned was there's a whole load of people who didn't have an everyday relationship with green spaces and parks. And we were finding lots of issues, not just the raves, and all that sort of things. But just what looked like sort of poor behaviour, I suppose, dumping and fly tipping. Fly tipping's gone through the roof. It's amazingly sort of bad and problematic out there. And that's another aspect we've lost the idea of reuse. And what I remember from being young is, oh, I'll do without. There's a phrase you don't hear very much nowadays. Well, make do. Now, I'm not advocating we go back to that situation, but what if this COVID thing is actually an indicator as to what we might have to do if we can't rely on global resources, if we can't travel? And you all know the signs out there that the climate is changing and things are getting worse. The big point is the baby that we've thrown out with the bathwater here is actually people were happier when they were engaged with their open spaces and their land. They were happier when they were growing in their own food and going for simple pleasures and having natural play and doing all those sort of good things. And this moment in COVID is an opportunity for people to think about revisiting those things. So the big increased footfall is a great opportunity. And what I'd say to every resident out there is the moment now is actually for you to think about joining a local group. The terrible truth about climate change is we are now all on the front line. It's not just about, you know, the kids in Africa and all that sort of business. It's not just about sort of the island nations disappear and dolphins and whales and stuff like that. It's actually about localism now. And what you and I and everybody does can have a positive effect. And the best way of enhancing those positive effects is to work with other people. And we have great groups. We have the Friends of Mossy Bank, we have Sutton Eco, we have the Friends of Sutton Park. I could go on, the Friends of King George V playing fields.
John, on that note, somebody's asked, what is there a given date for the return of the voluntary conservation groups in the park?
Back to me then. We're waiting for government advice on that very thing. At some point, Boris will tell us. So what we are doing at the moment is figuring out ways of working differently. So we're in a strange situation where sort of citizens can work out there. You can work in groups of 6 and stuff like that. But heaven forbid that we as a council take responsibility for what you do. Because that's got some sort of procedural liabilities and issues out there. So we're encouraging everybody to work safely and in small groups. And there's lots of things you can do to help your local place and your local park. And I haven't even mentioned sort of neighbourhood watch and all those sort of things. But now is the time for action. Now is the time to learn how good it is to give back and get involved. So the good news is we have a new group forming with aspirations, and I'm not going to try and set the agenda or tell you what that group is about, but I just want to say, as a local authority in parks, we love it when groups of people get together and communities get together. We love it sometimes when we fall out of them because we have a really good debate, but we love it when we all work together and achieve more. And that is what the environmental frontline is about now. That is what we need to happen. So take this COVID experience and join the Friends of the Gates. That's my warm-up act tribute to Becky. Over to Becky.
Over to Becky, yeah. You're on mute, Becky.
Mute. You need to mute.
There you go.
There you go.
Good evening. My name's Becky Clark. I'm a Friend of the Gate, and we're a community group, a voluntary community group looking to see what we can do to try and improve access, accessibility and facilities at the Boldmere and Banners Gate. So the key thing for us is that it's really important to work with partners. There are so many people who are already engaged with the park, who are users of the park and use different facilities at the park, as well as people like myself who are local residents, who certainly during the lockdown, it was literally the 1 hour a day when you were allowed out of your house during lockdown. It was a case of me taking my daughters down to the pool, go and have a look at the little baby cygnets and the little baby ducks, use a nature app to capture some pictures of ragwort, and then walking home. And one of the things I noticed is that Boldmere Gate has never ever been so busy. COVID-19 really has made people appreciate their local facilities more than ever. And certainly Sutton Park is such a massive community asset, probably underutilised, but I feel that now after COVID-19, with the increased footfall and with more families locally walking there, it's raised its profile no end. So one of the challenges with COVID is, as John said, there was some antisocial behaviour, and with additional footfall comes additional challenges. Our community group started nearly a year ago. We're really keen for more people to join us. We've planned a big consultation event over the spring and summer, engaging with the community, trying to drive up membership, trying to raise awareness of the facilities at the park and also the barriers to people enjoying the park as much as they could. But alas, COVID happened, which ruined any hope we really had of doing community engagement. But in some ways it was much better because more people have seen the spaces that are right on their doorstep, which is much more important. But again, during COVID, there was lots of litter. One of the challenges was the availability of things like public toilets. The bins were overflowing. So there's some of the negatives, but as I say, I've never seen so many people using the park as well. We even had very crazy or brave people trying to swim in the lakes. Some days it looked like Boldmere Drive. There was lots of cows everywhere and people taking photos of themselves with the cows. But it really showed that if there's an opportunity, people can really enjoy that space right here on their doorstep. So moving forward to next year, hopefully we're going to have a Commonwealth Games in Boldmere Gate. Not all of them, just the triathlon, but the spotlight of the world for a short time will be on our lovely suburb and our beautiful gates. So it's something that we're thinking of ahead as a community group. We don't necessarily think that the Commonwealth Games will offer big changes to the park, but what it might do is offer some small opportunities to look at what provisions available to the community in light of the increased footfall and see if there's anything we can do to capitalise on that. And again, as a community group, we can access funding pots that are not available to Sutton Town Council or Birmingham City Council. Lots of different organisations have specific pots of money available specifically for community groups. So again, if people like to come and join us, that would be amazing. Anyone who can help us drive forward better opportunities and help us drive forward applications for funding, again in partnership with people like John Porter and Sutton Town Council as well as the City Council to improve facilities would be amazing. The reason why our group originally formed is a couple of years ago there was a big neighbourhood consultation done in Boldmere looking at what could be done to make Boldmere a better place. And a key output from that was the desire to improve access for all and people of all ages, making it more family friendly. Also looking at improving things like play facilities, possibly a park and other opportunities. Now, we know that things may have moved on and that was not representative, but we're really keen to get involved with the groups that already operate there. We know we've got the Scouts and the Sailing Club, so really try and engage with them, but also just as importantly is the dog walkers, the people who take their kids and a football up there for a bit of activity, the joggers, the cyclists. We want to learn everything we can about how you feel we can make it a better and more inclusive place for all of you. So if you're interested in learning more about our group, joining us, that would be amazing. If you contact either Rob Pocock or Kath Scott, or pop your details in a message, that would be fantastic. Myself and Oliver, who's the chair, would be delighted to get in touch with you as we head towards half term, depending on what happens with COVID. Who knows? I could, if people are particularly interested in joining our group, perhaps I could do a socially distanced walk with some small groups. Certainly no more than 6, depending on what the regulations are. It may even be smaller. Some little walking tours over half term to sort of like look and sort of like take in some of the challenges that we have and some of the opportunities that lie ahead. So if that's something you're interested in, please get in touch with us. And although we haven't done a large amount of community consultation because of COVID, that will change, and as soon as we get past this difficult and challenging time, you will see us in Boltmere High Street directly asking for your opinions and views. So thank you for taking 5 minutes to listen to me, and I look forward to meeting you and finding out what we can do to make Boltmere and Bannersgate a place that you'd like to enjoy visiting more.
Thank you, Becky. Leslie, back over to me. Okay, thank you, Becky. That was marvellous. So if anyone wants to get in touch with Friends of the Gates and speak to Becky or Oliver, I've put my address and Rob's address in the comments section. So give us an email and we can put you in touch with the right people. We've had one question come up regarding bringing an income into the park. And I know this is a discussion we've had many times. And things have changed in the park in terms of bringing money in, but I'll let John Porter answer the question itself. So it is, can more be done to bring an income into the park? Other parks in the Midlands have splash parks and better quality play parks for children and cafes, etc., to bring families into the park and spending money and having a day out and spending money and income, putting income into the area. Can you explain a little bit more about what we already do, John? At the moment, and if there are any plans for the future.
Can you hear me? Am I on?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, cash in plain brown envelopes is very welcome.
Naughty.
We don't know where you live, John.
It'll go to the Friends of the Gates. Let me make it clear. Funny enough, it's always very interesting. This we always want more than we've got, and we end up with some paradoxes and challenges. Some of the bigger play areas out there, the so-called destination play areas, cause incredible traffic congestion and other issues for local people. So when we suggest some things every now and then, it all goes peak-tongue. So about 20 years ago, we tried to build an outdoor adventure facility here at Powell's Pool, and it ended up being built onto Clifton Road Youth Centre. And the general mood was against it because it would increase traffic and all sorts of, other people coming into our park type sort of situations. So what we've got to try and do is somehow improve facilities but make sure nobody visits from further afield, and that's incredibly difficult. And then we face, you know, statutory designations like the park being a site of special scientific interest and scheduled ancient monument, but there are still opportunities for enhanced development, and Boldmere is one of those places, I'm pleased to be able to say. And what we would like as a first step even at Boldmere is catering, like we have at Bannersgate or Towngate or Blackroot Bistro or the Bracebridge. When you think about it, there's lots of people that are within walking distance of Boldmere Gate, and we could probably, you know, find an alternative to the Miller and Carter Steakhouse, which is great, but I don't think it's a family-friendly pub type venue. It's something else. It does bring income into the park, but it doesn't produce the sort of the daytime family-friendly offer. So we think we can find a way of doing that, and I'm trying to arrange for the first step along that path towards a new cafe at Boldmere to be a consideration as Commonwealth Games legacy, which isn't next year, by the way, Becky, it's the year after. You nearly gave me a heart attack saying that. I've got too much to
2022.
Do. Yes. And you'll know, all of you as local people, that we've had some quite successful events on the field there, outdoor cinema, the concerts, and we've got a fantastic setup where we can accommodate cars and put on sort of really good community events in that glade there. We want partners to do that. We're still in touch with the cinema people. If it wasn't for COVID, we would be having more sort of dancing in the park to Dirty Dancing and Grease and whatever it was.
Cinemas and yeah.
Why the heck not? So we're up for it. The why not is about not compromising the nationally important heritage, and there are ways of doing it. What we can't do is turn it into Drayton Manor or, you know, something that's not appropriate. We have to find a solution which is respectful of the heritage and respectful of the local community, and we'll find a way, and that can be self-sustaining. I've avoided mentioning car parking, which is a great way of bringing income into parks, but
the parking
comes with some issues as well, shall we say.
So if you could whiz back over to me, Leslie. So the resident has a swift response for you, stating that traffic isn't a reason, and you haven't answered my question. We want a cafe and we want things for the kids. So can you just elaborate on that again?
Yes, certainly the cafe for me is the threshold, the milestone. One of the reasons we don't just put play areas in is we actually think they need to be supported by things like toilets and a place where you can have a cup of tea and a drink. We have lots of natural play now going on in the Boldmere area, and I did answer the question about a cafe. We want to bring that along, and that's on our plans. But it's not just a matter of saying yes, we'll have one and pick it off the shelf. There's quite an arduous process to go through to make things happen.
Indeed. Okay, over to me, Leslie. So I might have to draw this one to an end because there's no more questions in there. Do either of you, John or Becky, want to say a final word on the parks, etc.? No, all done.
Come and join us.
Come and join the parks. It's a really worthwhile thing to do, as are many of the schemes that we've got across Vesey ward. So I'll move on to the next agenda item, which is a policing and community update. Because the police are a separate entity to Birmingham City Council, obviously, we can't get them on to do a live Q&A with you today, the way we can with parks and roads and transport and highways. So what I've asked the police to do this time around is to do a video, and I sent them a load of questions to ask, like, updates on what's going on in the community, what's the latest COVID information that they're focusing on, what's the latest update on crime in the area. So bear with me a second while I share my screen and I'll put the video on, and also it will introduce you to our brand new sergeant for Vesey Ward. And I'll play that now. Just bear with me while I share the screen. It's about 10 minutes long and should answer some of the questions that have already been published on the Q&A here today. So 1 moment. Here we go. Press play. Can you see that?
I can see it, but I can't hear it.
You can't hear it. Let me cancel that and do it again. So share the screen. Can you hear?
Not here.
Can someone confirm they can hear that?
It's not audible to us. Yes.
No, I can't hear anything still.
Can't hear anything. Oh no.
My lip reading's not up to what it was. It's a fast talker.
Try muting your microphone when you play it. No, okay.
Sorry guys, I don't think that's worked.
I don't think it's working. Oh, I'm so disappointed.
Can we just ask the public if anyone can hear any of it and see if anyone can reply?
Can't hear, yeah.
Yeah.
Let me try and open the share tray again. Desktop screen. Again. If officers could give me some advice on how to share the sound, that would be great.
John, do you have any ideas? Because
Leslie or John?
I'm going through the email instructions that were sent over, and I think I can't see what you're doing wrong.
Not destined to have the police, are we?
We'll get them one day.
Oh, yeah, it's coming through now. Very quiet, but it's coming through. No, not now. Yeah, a little bit, very quiet. No, gone again. Very quiet there. Can I hear Street Watch?
I think the real issue is that the icon saying you must do them doing the, I think it isn't working. If you could all entertain yourselves for a moment on the chat, that would be lovely. If you can hear me say that, that would be even better. So close the share tray. Include audio. Oh, bear with me.
I've lost the presentation completely now, Councillor, from the producer side.
Yeah, I've stopped sharing it. I'm
Oh,
going to
okay.
try it
I thought
again.
it just gone off on mine.
Just the use sound option didn't work. So include audio won't work.
Good evening.
Hey!
To introduce myself, I'm Sergeant Cox, and I'm the new sergeant for the Sutton Vesey Neighbourhood Priority Team. A little bit about myself. I've been a police officer for about 12 years, having worked within the response department, investigation, and most recently on the gangs unit dealing with serious organised crime in Birmingham. I'm very excited to be working in what will be, for me, a very different era of policing. I'm very much a proactive police officer. I'm not one for sitting behind a desk. I love getting out and about into the community and talking to as many people as I can. So you're likely to see quite a bit of me about getting involved within the Street Watch, Business Watch and Speed Watch schemes. On the department we have 2 PCs and 3 PCSOs that are solely dedicated to the Sutton Vesey area. These are PC Donaher, PC Purcell, PCSO Sapal Singh, PCSO Ian Florence and PCSO Ian Willits. I'd just like to take the opportunity just to go through a number of the key crime statistics that are affecting the Sutton Vesey area. So within the last 31 days there have been 14 reported vehicle crimes. These involve theft as well as damage. There have been 4 domestic incidents reported, 14 assaults, of which 2 have been assaults on police officers. There have been 7 criminal damages reported in the last 31 days and 10 antisocial behaviour reports. Burglary and attempt burglary, there have been 10 reports of burglaries, however half of these relate to business premises. Of the 10 reported thefts within the last 31 days, 9 of those have related to business premises. There's been 1 robbery reported within the last 31 days and 1 drugs incident which relates to low-level possession of cannabis. Looking at the past 31 days, compared to previous months, vehicle crime is down by 14%. Overall, crime is down this month by 3%, which is a testament to the hard work that the officers have put in. The data collected from the crime statistics will obviously inform the patrol strategy that's implemented, how the officers are resourced. Compared to other crime types, vehicle crime, assaults and burglaries are the three highest reported incidents within the Sutton Vesey area. Therefore, as I've mentioned before, with it informing our patrol strategy, for the next month, this is where I'll be putting the focus. In relation to vehicle crime, the hotspot areas that I've been able to identify are Antrobus Road, Monmouth Drive and Sutton Park. Therefore, you'll likely see an increased presence of officers within these areas. In relation to assaults, a large number of the assaults have taken place as a result of the nighttime economy. So pubs have closed their doors and those in drink have become involved in violent incidents. Albeit the violent incidents are on the lower end of the scale, we're likely to see an impact of the COVID restrictions and the bars closing at 10 o'clock, hopefully having an impact by reducing the amount of assaults that take place. In relation to burglaries, as I've mentioned before, 50% of those have taken place as a result of business crime. This is the same for thefts. There is a new initiative taking place which has been driven forward by PCSO Satpal Singh, which is Business Watch. And we're hoping that the Business Watch that was implemented on the 28th of September will have an impact on reducing the theft-related offences within retail premises. In relation to burglaries on residential properties, I can't underestimate the impact and the personal impact that this has on an individual who is a victim of this crime. Clearly, one of the hot topic areas at the moment is around COVID-19. 2020 has all but been obliterated due to the pandemic, and we understand the effect that the new restrictions are likely to be having on the community, with the fear and the uncertainty as the restrictions take hold of the way that we socially interact with others, as well as the impact on businesses and the way that people make a living. I'm not going to talk about the guidelines and the regulations that have been put in place here. They can all be found on the government website. However, just to make you aware of what the police's approach to COVID-19 is and how that's likely to play out in your interactions with the officers that you see. Enforcement through the regulations that have been put in place are a last resort. The officers within Sutton Vesey are aware of what the regulations are, they're aware of what the guidelines are, and therefore I'd ask that you use the officers as a source of information to help inform you if you're unclear or uncertain about what any of the new guidelines are. The approach that I'll be expecting the officers to take is very much around engagement, encouraging and explaining, and that enforcement is a last resort option. It'll still be used if necessary, but the engaging, the explaining and the encouraging is very much an approach that we on Sutton Vesey want to be taking to keep you and the community safe. One area of concern that I've been made aware of is surrounding parking issues and inappropriate parking, specifically around school drop-off and school pick-up times. This has been given to PCSO Ian Florence to address. He's been tasked with attending a different school each day in order to be a point of contact for you to speak to and to also deal with any parking issues that arise. There are currently 5 street watch schemes that are running within Sutton Vesey. I had the privilege of going out with the Antra Buddies the other day, and it's great to see members of the local community policing and patrolling their own local community. As I've mentioned before, I'm very proactive, so I will aim to get out to as many of these groups as I can to patrol with you and to be able to talk to you and get to know some of the issues, as well as some of the positive points that are going on in your community. I've mentioned Business Watch. PCSO Sat Pal team has worked tirelessly to get Business Watch up and running at the Princess Alice Retail Park. For those that aren't aware, Business Watch involves a network of different shops in and around the Princess Alice Retail Park. It provides an opportunity for them to share information and to also work with us as West Midlands Police to make the retail park safer and a more enjoyable experience for yourselves as the community and for visitors to Sutton Coldfield. I know a number of people have spoken to PCSO Sing about Speedwatch. Due to administrative issues, this is something that unfortunately had to be put to one side, and we haven't been able to run them. However, I'm pleased to announce that these issues have been sorted, so hopefully within the next 2 to 3 weeks, Speedwatch will be back up and running. It's a great opportunity for the local community to get out and get involved in dealing and tackling with antisocial driving, and to really make a difference in this area, and to work alongside us in making the community safer. If you want to get involved in Street Watch or in Speed Watch, then please just send a message either on Twitter or to the Sutton Vesey email account. The address can be found on the West Midlands Police website under the constituency information. That's all I have to share with you right now. Thank you for your time. Please get involved in Street Watch and in Speed Watch. I look forward to seeing you there. And finally, thank you for the opportunity to work within Sutton Vesey.
Would work if I unmuted myself, wouldn't it? So thank you to our brand new Sergeant Adrian Cox for doing our very first live, well, not live video recording to enable the police to have their voice heard by the residents. It was a really brave thing to do, because that's the first time anyone's ever done that, and this is the first ward meeting ever to have done it as well. So again, breaking the barriers for Vesey ward. I would also just like yeah, got the sound to work. I think the technical issue was probably my very own to own and admit to. But one of the things he mentioned was the you know, we've got neighbourhood watch, we've got speed watch, we've got street watch, and now we've got business watch, all of which are amazing things to do. And I'm going to share a couple of pictures with you in a moment. But I went on a speed watch walk, and honestly, it was one of the nicest things I've done in a long time. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. Not only were the people that I went with truly amazing individuals from a resident's perspective, but they were, like, you know, really community minded, really enjoyed the walk, wrote down all the issues that they came across, logged graffiti, issues with BT boxes and Virgin Media boxes, and reported them themselves. And pretty soon I'm going to be out of a job as a councillor, because if you're doing all the reporting, you won't need us anymore. But that's fine and dandy. But I'd really love to see more people come on it. And I'm just going to show you a couple of little pictures of. Can you see that at all?
Right.
Yeah, the top one here is Street Watch. This is Sergeant Sat Pal Singh, and this lady here, lovely lady here, was training me on what to do in on the street watch walks, which was wonderful. And down here is our lovely Sergeant Cox, again Sergeant PCSO Sat Pal, and the street watch business watch team, and that's Rob and I giving it the go ahead. So that was marvellous. So that was really good. And thank you all. If there are any questions, I'll just check online.
Can I come back on the one that is online, Kath?
Yes, please.
Road. If the camera comes back.
The camera can go back to Rob, please, Leslie.
Yeah, thanks, Kath. I just wanted to pick up the message in the chat from a resident, Derek, who refers to drug dealing in the gully between Knifersley Road and Bretby Grove. I have flagged this one up. It's a complicated area because Knifersley Road is a cul-de-sac right on the edge of our ward in Sutton, and Bretby Grove is another cul-de-sac down the other end of the alley, which is actually in the Erdington constituency area. So the police forces kind of operate both sides of the gully. So what we really need to do is to make sure that the forces for the Vesey ward and for the Erdington ward collaborate on attempting to track down the dealers in that area. So I have hopefully initiated a collaboration between those two forces that will look at that site. I'm not sure if it was that dealer that's been dealt with, but there has, I think in the last day, been a dealer caught in the act, I think it was, by a covert police operation in the vicinity of our area. So it does prove.
Can't say too much.
The police are saying no more. And also, just while we're on, people mentioned graffiti. There has also been an arrest of an individual who's been engaged in graffiti in.
Yeah, what was his name again?
Area. I don't remember.
Sparky or something.
Yes, I can't remember his tag. It's one of those that's quite familiar, but it's an encouraging step, because a lot of people say to me and Kat, what can be done? Does nobody do anything about it? Well, they have actually managed to track this individual, again, I think witnessed in the act, and a conviction, well, it's a prosecution is intended. So it's good news on both those two fronts. So thanks to residents for raising those issues. Back to Kat.
Yes, thank you again. So those covert operations, which we can't really do too much talking about, do go ahead. I just want to reassure you. And there are several roads that have been brought to our attention across the ward. And obviously we have been speaking to the police about those, and those places are monitored in various ways, which I won't go into, but the police are on it, and are aware effectively. So if you do have any other issues that you're worried about, please don't hesitate to contact us, and we can make the police aware of that for you. Some of the great things that the Street Watch are doing are, they're reporting certain issues like this as well, and making it more prominent in the eyes and minds of the police service out there that cover our ward. So it's a really great thing. So I'll leave it there, and I'm going to move on to community updates. So far today, we've had two groups communicate with us to give an update. The first is the Bannersgate Neighbourhood Forum, to say that the latest gate post is out there, and you can access that by emailing on bgatepost@gmail.com if you would like to receive that copy of that on email. I'll post the link in the chat again today. And also from Eco Sutton, I'll just read out the update for you. Eco Sutton Ward Forum. The issue that is concerning Eco Sutton the most this month is the proposed change to the planning regime. If Parliament agree these proposals, this new scheme will reduce the ability of local people to review planning applications, and means that protection of valuable green sites must be taken very early in the process. Newspaper reports on office buildings turned into homes show how planning deregulation can work against sensible housing policies. And the final question from them was, will there be time in the calendar for a ward forum to discuss this topic before the government consultation closes on the 29th? The answer to that is probably no, because the next ward forum, I believe, is in December, but late November. So I think Rob and I maybe need to contact Eco Sutton separately to discuss that.
Can I come back in on that point, Kath?
You can, yeah. Over to you, Rob. Leslie.
Yes, thanks, Kath. I have had a number of residents email me about this planning policy that is out for consultation. anyone who wants to know more about it, please email me, rob.pocock@birmingham.gov.uk in the chat. I've got a number of briefing notes on it. I share Eco Sutton's concern about what's been thought of here. So if we can't actually hold a Vesey ward forum, which I don't think we can in the time, I will send out details, including how to respond to the government's consultation, which is going on. I think there is 5 more weeks left till the end of October, but anybody who has got concerns, this is the chance to let the government know about it. Thanks.
Okay, Leslie. I just want to go back to a question that came in from Ray regarding some complaints about noise from the licensed premises on Boldmere Road. In one particular establishment as well on there. I can definitely say that that establishment, I don't believe, had the right licensing to enable that to happen, and it's being looked into at the moment. And with regard to any other establishment that is there who have noise and people who are using the premises, customers, that's the word. If they're customers using the premises outside, thing, that there should be limitations on the license to enable them to do that. So we need to keep an eye on it, and you need to tell us when these things happen and how often, so that we can get the right people from licensing out to monitor the situation. And if it turns out that they are breaking the boundaries of their license, then we'll have that they will put measures in place to combat that. So I hope that answers your question, Ray. Do we have any other urgent business? Any other questions?
I've got a point to add on that point, Kath.
Do go ahead, Rob. Leslie, can you transfer to Rob, please?
Thanks, Kath. And just following up the point about licensing, this issue is often raised, in particular in areas around Boldmere local centre, in terms of both planning approval and licensing. There is no limit in planning. There's no law that allows the council to prevent new premises opening, other than the limit on fast food outlets. And the issues, I think, have been through facilities are not fast food outlets. But what there is in law, there is something called a cumulative impact assessment that can be done on licensed premises. So when they apply for an alcohol license and a live music license, the licensing department of the council, not planning, but licensing, do now have a power to introduce what basically is a cap, a limit, to prevent further licensed premises being added. And this is like the equivalent of saying that Boldmere is up to capacity. We've got enough licensed premises bank, and the cumulative impact of those licenses premises rises to the point which is no longer acceptable. There's a formula there, isn't there? There's a little formula. So what I'm going to suggest we do, and I've spoken to the licensing people about this, is we'll have a get together, probably Boldmere Futures, Boldmere Neighbourhood Forum, residents. I think we need a gathering, virtual meeting if we can't meet live, to talk about what residents would like to see done to kind of strike the right balance. We want Boldmere Centre to be a prosperous and flourishing centre, but beyond a certain point it gets to too much for residents, particularly over alcohol and live music. So it will be a case of sitting down with the licensing people to try to come to an accommodation on what is the limit beyond which the impact is too great. It's going to take a while to do it. It's probably years' work before it all got through the legal system, but the powers are there. And I know Kath and I both want to work with residents to see what we can do to try to use the licensing laws to put a limit to prevent excessive amount of drinking and riotous behaviour in Boldmere. So I think I'll leave it at that, but we'll come back to it when we get the chance to brief residents in more detail. Back to Kath.
So that just leaves me to, let me just double check this to see if there's a...
I've got one other bit of news, Kath.
You got one other bit of news, have you? Go on, Rob. Leslie, over to Rob.
Thanks. You can't shut me up, you see. Honestly, this is my last bit. Did you all know that there is about to be a Friends of Wild Green station being set up? I was talking to a fella yesterday whose neighbour, Nikki, around the area is going to set up a Friends of the Wild Green station, which is basically to tidy up, to put some flowers around it and make it look nice and attractive. So we've got friends groups in the park, we've got friends group at Princess Alice. We will soon have Friends of the Wild Green station. I think it's intended that it links also with Chester Road railway station, where Kath will remember there is a residents group, Little Boldmere residents group, who raised some issues about the poor state of the rail track in that area, the cut down trees and the railway station. And I know they had this idea of setting up a Friends of Chester Road railway station. What we'll probably do, since both stations are only half a mile apart, is create a friends group that covers both. And I thought that was a great idea. It wasn't my idea, it's a resident who's just decided she's going to do it. So maybe at our next meeting, we can get Nikki, the resident, to come and tell us what the Friends of Wild Green Station is all about. That's it for me. Back to Kath.
Okay, I think that draws us to an end of the end of the meeting. Although you already have one volunteer to join that group, so it's our lovely Ray who volunteers for everything because you're marvellous. On to any other business that's done. Future meetings. Next one will be at the end of November. We look forward to seeing you then, and thank you very much for joining us this evening. I know it's a long evening, and again we finished at 9 p.m, which is typical for a Vesey ward meeting, because they're always very lively and entertaining, and we've got great residents who ask us brilliant questions. So thank you for coming and joining us, and we wish you a lovely evening.
Thank you very much. Bye for now.